line, I have Bruna Mebs. How are we doing today, Bruna?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good, good. So you're an artist. We're in October right now, and we're taping this, which is Inktober month. Do you do any of that kind of stuff? Do you do any of that? Because you do a lot of pen and ink, from what I've seen.
Yeah, I haven't been able to sign up for the full month of commitment yet, but I do try to stay on track with what people have been doing.
Right. I'm the same way. I would love to get into it, but I spend all my time doing client work. I've never had time to do any of that. So that's
Exactly. October
the
is
problem.
busy.
So tell us about your art. Tell us about you, when you got started, those kind of things.
Yeah, so just I guess to give people a little bit of an idea, because I did not go to art school or anything like that, but my grandmother is an art teacher. So I grew up, art has been part of my life, I guess, since I can remember. So I can't even have a specific time to tell people, oh, this is when I started. I started since, kids start drawing, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
But professionally, I decided to take this as a full-time job in 2015. So full-time 3 years.
What were you doing before that as a profession? Just to give us an idea. It doesn't, nothing
Yeah,
particular.
so I went to a fashion design school when I was working as a costume designer right off school. So I worked in that industry for about 4 years before actually deciding to switch to illustration.
So you've been basically doing art your whole life, and I'm happy to
Yeah.
hear somebody else is not going through the whole art school thing, because I'm one of those who did not. Although I think you've had private lessons your whole life, by the sounds of it, with your
I
grandparents.
guess so. Yeah, I can't really, which wasn't, from what I can remember, not the basic classes. I guess my grandmother was never like, "Oh, you're very good. Continue." She was always very tough and strict. So I don't know if they were actually, good to have had those in the beginning, but
Probably made you work harder, so that's probably probably a
true.
good
But he
thing.
also made me probably delay wanting to go into it.
Yeah, is that where you got your inspiration from? From your grandparents or from your family, or?
Yeah, my parents were both very creative people too. So my dad used to have a graphic design business. So I feel like I kind of didn't have an option growing up. I couldn't. There was no way I could be a lawyer or anything like
Yeah.
that in that house.
Well, that would have helped too, right? A lawyer would have gone gone well to help, I guess. For
Oh my god, yeah, I blame them so much. Still, I'm like, you two just did not give me option. Being
Yeah.
an artist is not easy.
I know, we just hit our 100th episode on the podcast, and so I dedicate it to my grandfather, who's a writer. He's a poet, and it was learning about him and seeing, he lived in Guyana, so I didn't see him like every week or anything like that. But it's funny how you get the inspiration from people you may not have thought are the ones that gave you that inspiration.
For sure. And my grandmother, what was funny about growing up, it wasn't like I would go to her house and we would pretend we were doing art, for fun. It was more like if I wanted to have any sort of allowance for her, I'll have to help her as her assistant.
Nice. Well, there's worse jobs. I had to do ironing in the house, so go with the art. You're better off
Yeah,
there.
true.
What kind of mediums do you work in? I noticed that you did some watercolor, and pen and ink seem to be very strong point. What kind of
Yeah.
mediums else?
So watercolor is more popular for my clients, I guess. That's what I get most hard for, but I do like ink personally the most. So
Okay.
that's why you probably see a mix of both. So
Yeah, and I've seen everything from portraits to You do a lot of botanical work, flowers and stuff like that. So, is
yeah.
there anything that's a specific one that you really enjoy, or?
I do personally, again, like the botanical. If I could pick something, probably to just focus on would be that. But again, I would need to do any, commission that comes my way. So if you ask me to draw anything, I'll probably figure out a way.
It's funny, because I used to be like that when I started my art business. I was actually doing landscapes. I was doing pen and ink landscapes, was what I was, and I love old buildings and that kind of
Hmm.
barns, that kind of stuff. But in my area here, there's a lot in Oakville, which is just east of me here. There is a lot of artists. That's kind of the art community, if you will. And everybody's doing landscapes. When I switched to my cartoons and comic book work is when things took off for me, and I've never gone back. So I do my landscapes as my passion stuff when I just want to sketch for myself. But my cartoon work is what's
You
selling.
gotta do what pays the bills too. That turns into its own art.
Yes. What inspired you to get into to start your own business? Because a lot of us want to do the art, but when the business comes up, it's a whole different model than what most people think, right?
Yeah, it is, right? It's like it's almost sometimes I joke that it's like I feel like art is like 30% of what I do, and like
That's right.
70% is like everything else, and that
Yeah.
you never thought you had to do when it's your own business. But
Right.
I do like my whole life. I always wanted to make sure that I was, have the freedom to kind of do my own thing, my own time, and I also really wanted to spend, I guess, the least amount of time doing what I don't like,
Right.
I guess.
Right.
So turning whatever passion, I wanted to pursue as a main full-time job to me was always the goal. I never um, wanted to do as just a part-time thing because I feel like that gets to become very hard to manage and balance. And yeah, I feel like I know a lot of people that decided to just pursue it as a part-time and then they end up never having the time to do it. In order to make sure that that wasn't the case.
Yeah. So now I was looking at your site, and I got to say I'm a bit confused. Not by your site, but you talk a lot as the designer and then the artist. It's almost like there's two different people. So I don't know. Do you consider yourself the
Yes.
designer or the artist? And I was trying to figure. I know. I mean, you could be both. I'm both. I'm an artist and designer, but probably the art is more prevalent, or I'm more of an illustrator, I'd say. What's it
Yeah.
for you?
It's hard for me, I think, because my background in fashion, we call fashion artists as designers.
Right. Yes.
But I do see what they do as art as well, even though it's not just meant for, there's clothes can be, there's so many different reasons why people create a piece of, clothing that it's hard. So that's why I think the confusion of the name for me too is like, I feel like I'm both, but at the same times, and like, how can you be a designer and at the same time not be an artist? And how
Right.
can you be an artist nowadays and not design your own website or your own logo or your own business card?
Yeah.
So I think they merge.
They do, and for me, I when I think of designers, I think of either graphic design or I guess design, design your room or design your home or something like that.
Mhm.
So that's kind of what I thought when we first got introduced, and when I went to your site, I go, oh, she's an artist. She's doing pen and ink and all these things that I like to do. So I was kind of a little. I go, okay, I'm not sure what she's doing, but I mean, it's all
Yeah.
beautiful. So I understand the whole.
I think it all started because when I started the business itself, it was just a design studio. So
Yeah.
then I was just calling myself an artist. And then what turned into more of a brand, then it became more design as well, I guess.
And you are now your own brand. You have these daily videos. I watched a couple of them. I've learned how to make a sandwich now.
Oh my God,
you,
that's
you
really
have one on
funny.
learning how to make a sandwich. So everybody, just go do that if you're at lunch. That's a good video to watch. So tell us what inspired you to get going with that, because a lot of artists are introverts and don't actually want to be showing people that side of them. I know whenever I'm doing consulting, I'm saying, you want to show some of that behind the scenes stuff, and I try to do that myself. So what inspired you to start that?
I think for I do not consider myself an extrovert by any means. I
Yeah.
feel like I could definitely live in a cabin by the woods by myself and never see anybody. But I do know the importance, I guess, of putting yourself out there nowadays. Everybody um, always always asks me questions about my process and that kind of thing, and I felt like I also love to see that kinds of
Yeah.
inside of people's lives, not just like the final work, but actually what was your day like to create that. So I figured why not give it a try. So it's still brand new for me to
Okay.
do it in video form, but it's been fun.
So how are the ones going over? The ones like making a sandwich and those, because you've got.
Yeah,
How
so
is
then it became more of like, since I'm going to film today, I might as well show this too. And then
it?
it's more like even when I'm watching videos of just people showing the art, and they somehow for a second they also show like how they made their coffee kind of thing, right? And then
Yeah.
you're like, oh wait, but that was kind of cool too, and then you want to know what they put in their coffee, and that turns into its own thing. So the videos for me is just pretty much just showing uh, all aspects of my life, I guess. If
Okay.
and you can pretty much pick and choose. Now I'm even putting a little tag on top if it's like our business, are in business video or more of a life video, and then you can,
Right.
if you don't want to see the, how I make my bed and stuff like that, you skip those videos.
Be careful how far you go with that. That might bring out another series again.
Right.